Mark Twain is a very famous American author. He was born on November the 30th, 1835. This just so happens to be the first day that Halley's Comet appeared that year. When Twain passed away in 1910, it was also the first day of Halley's Comet for that year. He actually predicted this would happen in 1909 when he said, "I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. It's coming again next year, and I expect to go with it." Anne Parrish, who was an American novelist, was visiting a bookstore in Paris in the 1920s. She found a book that was one of her childhood favourites, Jack Frost and Other Stories. She decided to look through the book and even showed her husband, telling him about the memories she had of the book when she was just a child. Her husband took the book from her and started looking through it as well. When he opened the cover, he noticed that written inside was the wording, "Anne Parrish, 209 North Weber Street, Colorado Springs." This was Anne's very own book from when she was a child. You have to wonder, did she buy the book? James Dean was killed in a terrible car accident in September 1955 while driving his Porsche. After the accident, things started happening that couldn't be explained, and the car itself was declared extremely unlucky. While at the garage, the engine fell out of the car, crushing the legs of the mechanic working on the car. The engine was sold to a doctor who put it into his race car. The doctor was then killed in a race accident. The garage that the Porsche was repaired in ended up being destroyed by fire. As if that wasn't enough, the Porsche was on display at a museum. While it was on display, it fell off the mount and broke the hip of a teenager who was there to view the car. After this incident, the car was being towed to Oregon, where it fell off the tow bar and crashed through the front window of a shop. All these things added up seemed like a lot of terrible coincidences. Then, in 1959, the car was found sitting on steel supports where it had been broken into 11 pieces. Maybe we know why now. We all know the Titanic was a very large cruise ship that was supposedly unsinkable. But then it hit an iceberg in the Atlantic Ocean and sank. That was in 1912. The strange coincidence began in 1898 when Morgan Robinson wrote a book called Futility. In this book he wrote about a ship similar to the Titanic, but it was called the Titan. This ship was also unsinkable, but in the book it struck an iceberg and sunk. In the book, this incident took place the very same month that the Titanic was sunk. September the 11th, 2001 was a terrible day in US history. Many lives were destroyed by these attacks, but a couple from Birmingham, England can thank their lucky stars. Jason and Jenny Kearns Lawrence love to travel, but may be changing their ways soon. They witnessed 3 separate international terrorist attacks in a total of 7 years. They were in New York when the Twin Towers were struck on September the 11th, 2001. But then, in 2005, they were also in London when there were a series of suicide attacks on the tube trains and on a bus, which killed 52 civilians. That's not it though. They were also in Mumbai in November 2008. This was when there was a large coordinated shooting and bombing spree throughout the city. Jenny said, "It's a strange coincidence. The terror attacks just happened when we were there in the cities." I don't think I'd want to go on holiday with them. Would you? When watching The Wizard of Oz, you may notice that Frank Morgan plays the taxi driver in Emerald City, the fortune teller Professor Marvel, and of course, the Wizard of Oz himself. When they were debating on the costume for Professor Marvel, they decided they wanted him to look down on his luck. They found a very nice coat that was just a little bit tattered. During the filming, Morgan pulled out one of the pockets and noticed there was some wording written on the inside of that pocket. The name on the pocket was L. Frank Baum, who just so happens to be the author of The Wizard of Oz. Thinking this name was a joke, they contacted Baum's widow, also his tailor, and they confirmed that this was, in fact, L. Frank Baum's jacket. The two children who are circled in the above picture are Amy Maiden and Nick Wheeler. They were going to be married and were visiting Nick's grandparents, where they were looking through some old photo albums. They found this photo of Nick at the beach in Cornwall. When they took a closer look, Amy noticed that it was her in the background. This picture was taken 11 years before they were set to marry. They ended up getting married on the same beach where this picture was taken. You may not have heard of Tamerlane, but he was a great warlord in Asia in the 14th century. He had many brilliant military ideas and he gained control over large areas of Asia. However, his wars also caused the deaths of at least 17 million people. After Tamerlane's death, Joseph Stalin, the dictator of the Soviet Union at the time, ordered for the tomb of Tamerlane to be opened by a team of archaeologists. When they opened the tomb, they were welcomed by an eerie inscription on the inside of the tomb. It read, "Whoever opens my tomb shall unleash an invader more terrible than I." Within hours of the tomb being opened, the Germans invaded the Soviet Union. Stalin decided in 1942 that Tamerlane's remains should be put back into the tomb with full burial rites. Soon after he was laid back to rest, the German army surrendered at Stalingrad.